The following podcast contains spoilers for Worth. You've been warned!
What's up, everybody?
Oh.
And welcome back to another episode of KFR News Radio. This is your host, Glenjamin Button, along with your host, Miguel Migusto.
Glenn, I'm worried.
What are you worried about, my boy?
You sound like you're stuck in a well or a cavern of some kind.
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
I would. I mean, I already know, but for this bit, I would like to know.
For this bit, it just is well, I fell into a deep state of a hole called moving into a new home.
Oh.
So the one, my old one that I'm currently recording in is very, very empty compared to what it used to be. There's only a dresser and this desk here. And I'm holding a towel over my head the best I can to block out any other noise. But there's still a little bit of an echo, but it's whatever. It's like the days when I was in Virginia.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Please forgive us for the quality of his audio. It's not a normal thing. It won't be a normal thing. It will not continue. But it does remind me of the early days of
how we started out.
How we started out. But anyway, Glenn, I already know the answer to this, but how many movies did you see last week?
I saw 2.
What?
And there's no extra ones. It's just 2 we watched.
No way.
For the review and then the review. That's right. So we had watched Bodies on Thursday. I got a review up on that bad boy. I didn't get to watch it because I was up in New York helping people get married and stuff. But I will get on that soon. So you might be watching it before me. Consider yourself lucky, you bastards.
Yes.
And, of course, the last movie that I watched was Worth, which we will get into in a bit after you tell me your spiel of what you watched, my man.
You know, I just watched 11 movies. No big deal. No big deal. First, I started off with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's 3 right there. Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King. These are movies that are in the 1001 movies you must see before you die. Will be included in the Cinema Bucket List episode in September. So check out what I thought there. But it's Lord of the Rings. It's a trilogy that, took the world by storm in the early 2000s.
You know what it's about, people. Come on.
Exactly. Then we watched Bodies together. Like you said, we have a review for that on the YouTubes. So you can check out our thoughts on that there. Then I watched with my boy, an extremely goofy movie, because we watched a goofy movie last week.
You might as well just do both.
Had to show him an extremely goofy movie because it's extremely goofy. It's it's an extremely goofy movie. If you haven't seen it, you probably never will. But it's I enjoy it. Then I watched a movie called 48 Hours with I believe it's Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. Yeah, Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. Kind of like a buddy cop movie where Eddie Murphy is a prisoner that Nick Nolte gets out for 48 hours to try to help him catch someone. Really fun movie. Eddie Murphy is surprisingly not hilarious in it, but it's also not supposed to be super hilarious.
Yeah.
He has funny moments, but it's definitely like a straighter role for him. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Then for the 1001 movies you must see before you die, Cinema Bucket List September episode, I watched Juliet of the Spirits. You can find out what I thought on that in September. It is directed by Federico Fellini, the first Federico Fellini movie I've ever seen, which, many people would be surprised by, but he's Glenn, I don't know if you know him, but he's a very famous Italian director from the, I believe, 60s and 70s. I might be off there. But this movie was...
If a movie was named, I might remember it.
8.5 hours, I think, or 8.5, something like 8.5.
No.
I don't know. We're gonna get past it because that's like the only movie that I've heard of. So
yeah,
but he's a very famous director that is just one of the directors that I haven't seen anything except for Juliet of the Spirits. But you can find out what I thought on that in September. Then my uncle has been in town from California,
my man.
and he loves going to the Bryn Mawr Film Institute with me because they have, in his words, the best popcorn ever.
It is pretty delish, I must say.
Like last time he was here, we went to see Pulp Fiction because it was the only thing worthy of seeing at the time he was here. Mm-hmm. And after he finished his popcorn, he was like, I've already seen Pulp Fiction. We could just go. Because he only wanted the popcorn. We ended up staying for the whole movie, but he loves the popcorn, and it's really good. So
it's so good. If
you're in the area, go to Bryn Mawr Film Institute and get some of their popcorn. But we watched Fire of Love, which is a documentary about volcanologists who I think they were married. They were at least like a long-term couple. I don't know if they're legally married or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's essentially their story of how they met and studied volcanoes together and eventually died in a volcano together.
Oh, jeez.
Very romantic, and sad and all that, but very informational. Really enjoyed that documentary. So I would recommend that. Then for the 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, I watched Salt of the Earth, which is a movie from 1954 that is about a Union mine strike. Miners were striking because of poor work conditions, which, you don't hear about much from the 50s because I feel like the 50s were very anti-union. I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. But I know for a fact that Hollywood and the government was against this movie because it was made by a bunch of people who were blacklisted for ties to the Communist Party. And, you can find out more information. It's a pretty interesting story. I kind of go into it a bit in the September episode, so you can tune into that and hear more about that. Then I watched Worth, we're going to talk about in just a second. And then I watched Winchester 73 for the 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. Also the September episode of Cinema Bucket List. James Stewart in that. It's a Western. You'll find out more in September. But without any further ado, let's get into Worth.
Looking right now, I don't see it. Are you sure?
Are you okay?
Did you see it?
Watch
Right
out.
now, I can see it. Oh my God.
The shock from the attacks in New York and D.C. reverberate across the entire nation.
What we're facing is a national emergency.
We are proposing the Treasury Fund offering compensation to the victims.
Ken, we'll have to negotiate all settlements.
The victims and their families will be compensated based on economic value lost. That's where the formula comes in. 80%.
Any fewer come aboard, the lawsuits that result could crater the economy.
Why isn't an equal payment for everybody? My daughter's worth just as much as anybody in a corner office.
My wife died that day, and everything about this formula offends me. Sorry to hear that.
But we can't bend the rules for every case.
Why not? Congress gives you broad discretion. But when 7,000 citizens ask you not to be treated like some numbers on a spreadsheet, you act like that law came down from Sinai.
I know the rules. State law says we were nothing to each other. But I'm the one he called.
An attorney in Washington, D.C. battles against cynicism, bureaucracy, and politics to help the victims of 9/11.
Yes, directed by Sarah Colangelo, written by Max Borenstein, or Borenstein, who knows? He knows, probably, presumably.
I hope he knows.
And is starring Michael Keaton, Amy Ryan, Stanley Tucci, Tate Donovan, Shunori Ramanathan, Talia Balsam, Laura Benanti, and Chris Tardio, as well as several other people. But yeah, this is came up on Streaming Roulette. And, I didn't really expect much from this movie because it kind of seemed just like a legal procedural about, exactly what it's about, which is about like payouts for victims of 9/11. And that's essentially what it is. It kind of gets into the details a little bit, but it's more or less just, to me, it felt more like witness testimony more than an actual movie, if that makes sense.
A lot of it, like going through it, I was enjoying a lot of the parts where the victims' families were speaking about how much they miss their families and $1 can't be put on their death and stuff like that. But then a lot of it felt like when they were going to investigate it, and, pardon my French, but it felt like Spotlight a lot. And
yeah, I actually said
how
that
much
as
this pretty much just felt like a carbon copy of it, just because that did really well, and then they just kind of made this. Maybe maybe that's not the exact reason, but it did just kind of feel like it was kind of like a kind of copy and paste type thing, but just with the events of 9/11 that happened.
Yeah, I would agree. Spotlight is definitely more of a well-made film. Not to say that this isn't well-made, but it's kind of, there's no stakes in it. Like, that people are going to get money at the end. It's just a matter of how much money they're going to get. So, like, right off the bat, it doesn't feel like there's any stakes in it. Like, unlike Spotlight, whereas, like, is this going to be covered up? Is this going to... are we going to do all this work for nothing? This, you knew they were doing the work for something, and something was going to happen in the end. It was just literally just a matter of how much money would be divvied up and everything. So that kind of took away from some of the tension. But like you said, hearing like the stories from family members and everything was, it was very nice because for those of us who were alive, you and I included. That was kind of a collective trauma we all went through.
Oh, yeah, big time.
At least in the Northeast. I know my wife, she was in Florida. So they, according to her, they didn't feel as, like they knew it was a huge tragedy, but because they're not 90 miles away like we are, they didn't feel as connected to it. Like it didn't feel like an immediate danger to them. Whereas like we're close to Philly, there's a lot of government things in Philly that could be potentially attacked. In Florida, it's Florida. Who's going to attack Florida?
Yeah, I know this was a huge thing for a lot of, at least like either like friends of mine or like brothers of friends of mine for, this whole thing. And then obviously what happened after 9/11 is just like all the wars and all the battles for oil and shit like that, and just how much they felt like they needed to be a part of this war on terrorism after the fact, and how many, just the attack alone, how many lives it's kind of just ruined from that. Not even, it doesn't even go into detail about that, but like this is just the families of the 9/11 attack and how crazy. Honestly, it didn't even go into any of that at all, and I'm just kind of surprised that it didn't even mention any of that.
Any of the wars after?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. I do think this was more focused on the victims of the actual attack, which I think is a good thing. But the whole thing is like this attorney he's been an attorney his entire life, so to him, it's all about helping people get what they can get, knowing that if they try to get more, that they're not probably going to lose. And I work with a lot of lawyers. One of my gigs I do is I edit videos for lawyers, and it really is like a thankless job because, like, especially when it comes to like life insurance or something like this, where it's like no amount of money is going to bring the person back, and it unfortunately is a numbers game where like the number has to be calculated how much this is going to impact those who are still living. And it's really just like a thankless task, and I think they did a good job at balancing that, where like Michael Keaton in the beginning was just focusing on the numbers and just trying to help people, and then decided to like open up and kind of hear stories and try to change the rules based on the stories. So it was kind of a good middle ground there. But I really felt for Michael Keaton's character in the beginning because like everyone was just yelling at him, and it was just like, he's not the one that did this.
Yeah, he's just the messenger trying to get you money.
He's trying to get you what money you can get, because if you go to court, you will probably lose or keep getting delayed until you give up. Because that's unfortunately how insurance companies work. And I know that from doing countless videos on insurance stuff and how like all the shitty things that they pull to try to not pay people. Don't trust your insurance company.
Never do.
It's good to have them. I mean, I think you kind of have to have them, but never trust them. So one of the things that I kind of appreciated about this movie is right before the attacks happened, they showed like the normalcy of the beginning of the day. And that is something that, like, honestly, I kind of forget because of the rest of the day, obviously.
Yeah, and how catastrophic everything was around it, but how normal of a day it was just for literally everybody.
Yeah, like, obviously, when you didn't know what was going to happen, it had to be a normal start of the day, but it's not something that people really think about. So I thought that was a cool touch. But it just kind of got me, if you don't mind me asking, what do you remember of that day?
I remember telling you last week that I don't remember almost anything. I just remember asking one specific thing. I think we got sent home from school early. Like, I don't think we watched it. And I think that when I saw it on the news, like on TV, I asked my mother, I was like, is this a movie right now? This is this is a crazy movie. Like, I don't even remember how old I was. I was like 8, I think. So like my brain was just like, that's crazy stuff going on that TV right now. That's a wild action movie. Lo and behold, it was not an action movie. It was an action life.
Yes, it was.
But yeah, that's all I remember, really.
Yeah, we didn't get to go home. I was 11. It was I was actually 6th grade. I think it was like my 3rd week of 6th grade, and so like pretty much right when we got to school, because it happened like early in the morning, like before 9 a.m. is when it started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so like throughout the entire day, there was just like announcement after announcement asking people to go to the principal's office and everything, and not saying why. And all the teachers were acting super weird, but they weren't telling us anything. And then lunch came around, and like everyone was just kind of like, people were still talking, but it was much more quiet than it normally was because no one had told us anything. And they just kept calling during lunch, calling people to go to the principal's office. And it was just getting smaller and smaller. And then after our lunch, I was actually in math class, and that's when they had like a TV announcement. The principal got on the TV and everything and told us what had happened. And then the rest of the day was literally, for the people that were still there, all classes were more or less canceled. It was just everything became a study hall, and like teachers would let us ask questions if we had any, which no one had any. And then the bus ride home was so eerily quiet. Like it was still like half full, and my bus was super loud, but like that day, like no one said anything to each other. Colin and I didn't even talk to each other that day.
Oh, wow.
And because we were neighbors, and it was just such a eerie feeling. And you know,
I mean, that might even be what happened in my situation. My memory's shit.
I mean, you were 8 years old.
Yeah, let's be honest. My memory's always been shit. But
you were 8 years
still.
old. I was 11. The memories you have when you're 11 are much clearer than when you were 8.
Yeah.
But it was such an eerie thing to go through, you know, and especially, I mean, my mom is and was a teacher's aide at the time, so she couldn't go home early to get us out. And my dad is a pastor, or was a pastor. He's a chaplain now, which is kind of different from a pastor. But so, you know, he was working the whole day trying to anyone that called him be available for them. So we just stayed in school the whole day. And then when we got home, my mom got home like an hour after us, and then my dad got home, I think like 3 hours after us or whatever. So me and my sisters were essentially by ourselves the whole time, and that's not knocking my parents. It's just what happened.
Yeah, it's a big day.
Yeah, so we kind of like came into information on our own via our teachers or the news, and it was probably the first time that I watched the news for an extended period of time. But yeah, it was. I just remember feeling very nervous and sick to my stomach, and I feel like this kind of captured that pretty well. With Michael Keaton looking out the train and the aftermath of it all.
Yeah, and it doesn't even show you like what it is. It's just like a reflection in the mirror or like the window of what it is, instead of like any other thing that would do it in bad taste would show like all of the craziness.
Yeah. This I mean, this is obviously in DC because there's no skyscrapers. So it's probably the Pentagon, but yeah, just seeing the smoke in the distance was, I don't want to say classy because, you know, something like this is never going to be classy. But as classy as it could be, with just showing what little it showed, and then jumping to like a month later or whatever it was.
I think my favorite person in this was Stanley Tucci, which, I mean, isn't
Stanley
hard to
Tucci's
say.
great.
Man, he really drove it home. And just immediately, like, his just very stern character, just like, oh, I'm not here to listen to all you yell at this man. I'm here to listen to what the fuck he has to say.
Yeah.
And even though I don't agree with him,
Yeah.
you know, I just want to know what the hell's going on and what they plan to do, so I can be upset about it and protest about it. That was like really cool. How he was just very, just straightforward with his character right from the get go.
Like he didn't hold back any punches. He told Michael Keaton's character exactly how he felt. Yeah, I would really agree. And I like that Michael Keaton's character was imperfect. Like, you know, he really wanted to help people, but he also had trouble reading the room, which, you know, more often than not got him into trouble. But I feel like a lot of people, and this kind of bothered me a little bit when Frank Donato, the brother of the one firefighter who died, and his wife found out, you know, that her husband had a affair and all that. The brother, when he was talking to Michael Keaton, kept trying to get him to promise something. And little fact for you people, lawyers cannot promise you anything, because if they do, they are held liable, and they are essentially, you could sue them if they promise you something and it doesn't happen. So if you keep telling an attorney to promise you something, they won't, just because they can't. I mean, they could, but it legally would not be good.
Yeah.
So that when he kept like pushing Michael Keaton to promise him, I was like, even like the least amount of knowledge for how law works, you should know that a lawyer can't promise shit, because it's all just like speculation and what they think will happen. And I don't know, that just really annoyed me.
I could imagine so. I think one thing that kind of about Michael Keaton that's kind of been killing me lately is it feels like he's just been in so many of these biopics lately.
Yeah.
That like he was in Founder, he was in Spotlight, and I'm sure he's been in something else too. I just can't picture it in my head right now. But I mean, he always does great in them. I just I don't know. I don't know how I exactly feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's all coming off of him
Trial
being
Chicago 7 too.
Yeah, it's all coming off of him being in Birdman, which Birdman was the role of a lifetime for him. So it's all been kind of a disappointment.
Yeah.
It's harsh, but it is a disappointment after Birdman. You know, yes, his character got jump-started back up, but like in Birdman was such a powerful performance and such a different story that these movies kind of feel a little too safe. And I don't want to say boring, but you know, I can't think of a better word.
Well, so even Spotlights, it wasn't boring.
Yeah, Spotlight was really good, but then
Founder was interesting, but then you got this where it just feels like it's the sequel to Spotlight.
Yeah. And Trial of the Chicago 7, he's not in it long enough to really judge him in that, but it seems to be getting less and less, and it's just I think. You know, after Birdman, it's just such. I would have liked to see him take weirder, more extreme roles.
Yeah, he's also getting older too.
That's true.
Even though he was just about to play Batman in 2 movies, you know, both of them are basically on the cutting board right now. So it's kind of hard to find work when your work's also
Ezra
getting
Miller
cut at the same time because of other people. Oh boy.
But yeah, I mean, this movie's fine. Didn't really wow me. I kind of kept asking my parents questions about that day because my dad was a chaplain at Ground Zero. I think like a month or two after, like he went up to New York to kind of, I don't know, like kind of like I don't know what you would call it, but kind of like therapy, but not official therapy, just like, I guess, religious leadership. He went up to New York for that. So, like, I don't know. Anytime 9/11 is brought up, I think about that, and I don't know. I feel connected to 9/11 in a way because of that, even though it wasn't me. It was just my dad, but...
There was one thing that I was curious that they kind of didn't go into at all. There's a character in it named Priya Kundi, I think is how you pronounce her last name. And she's like how do we pronounce this in the best way? A Middle Eastern descent. And like they don't go into her having like troubles after 9/11 at all. Like you would assume a lot of them did.
Well, the actress is from India.
Yeah.
According to her IMDb profile. So I think enough people know that that's different, but also at the same time, there's enough people who don't know that it's different.
Yeah, but like if you were in 2001, right after that,
no, I agree.
I was kind of surprised they didn't go into that at all, and just any troubles that character specifically would have probably had. I was expecting it to show up at any time, but it never did.
The closest you get is one of the victims calls Michael Keaton's character a Jew lawyer. His words, not mine, of course. And again, that was towards his Jewishness, not her like Middle East. But yeah, I would agree with that. That it was kind of. I mean, I guess it would have detracted from the main story a bit, but it's also. I feel like it also definitely would have happened at some point.
It most definitely would have happened, especially right after that time. Like everybody, had it hard, especially them, because they were being falsely accused of being a part of it when they were not.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, other than that, it was a good movie for the most part. But let's just get into the write-ins.
So that does it for our review for Worth. That brings us to the judgment. As always, it needs to be a unanimous decision whether or not it goes to the KFR shelf with the likes of Apostle and Handmaiden. This was streaming roulette, so I guess I could just go first. I thought it was a decent movie. It didn't wow me. You're right. It kind of felt like it was trying to copy Spotlight, but kind of failed with the emotional punch aspect of it. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we knew that people were going to get money at the end, and it wasn't a huge question mark throughout the movie.
Also, a big thing is with Spotlight, like you found out how many people were being affected by it versus how many is being affected by it right off the bat.
Yeah, I think when it happened, people. I don't know how true this is, but I heard someone or I read something that was just like. Everyone is within 1 degree of someone who died in 9/11, meaning someone who knows someone who died in 9/11.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, of course, but everyone is kind of connected in that way. So you're right. Like in Spotlight, it is absolutely just overwhelming how many people were affected. And in this, it's just like, it's right off the bat. There's no surprises or anything. So I think with that in mind, again, fine movie, but I don't think it has enough there to really be put on the shelf.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you, The fine movie. I really like Stanley Tucci. Michael Keaton was great. And kind of everybody else who played in it, but, just didn't have the same punches that any other of the type of movie really had. Sadly.
So, Worth does not make it on the KFR show for the likes of Apostle and Handmaiden, and that brings us to our assignment for next week. It is my turn to pick a movie. A little fun fact, it's our last round before we get into the KFR annual Spooktacular. So this one won't be a horror movie, or will it? It won't be.
Ooh.
But I, growing up, and still kind of, really like the old steampunk sci-fi novels of the 1800s, like H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and such like that. So the movie I'm picking is based off a book by Jules Verne, which was one of my favorite books growing up, and that is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and that it will be available on Disney+.
The motion picture screen explodes with unprecedented power as the two masters of imagination, Jules Verne and Walt Disney, join to bring you a shattering new experience in entertainment. read by countless millions, translated into 18 languages. This classic adventure is a story of measureless scope, fraught with fantastic beauty and danger. 4 great stars give the spark of life to its leading characters in a series of inspirational performances.
A ship sent to investigate a wave of mysterious sinkings encounters the advanced submarine, the Nautilus, commanded by Captain Nemo. It is directed by Richard Fleischer, written by Earl Felton, based on the novel by Jules Verne, starring Kirk Douglas, James Mason, Paul Lucas, Peter Lorre, Robert J. Wilk, Ted DeCorsia, Carlton Young, J.M. Kerrigan, and many, many others. But yeah, I really like these kinds of things. I liked them more when I was a kid, but I still enjoy them from time to time. And I've been meaning to watch this for a while. And figured let's just do it.
Oh, I found it. I was looking at the the 1997 one with Michael Caine, and I'm like, oh, that's not any of the people he named currently.
Yeah, there's a few of them. Sorry, the 1954 version with Kirk Douglas is the one we're watching. I know for a fact that I have seen part of this when I was at a family friend's house. You know, it was just on the TV, and the for the time, the effects of it are pretty impressive if I remember correctly. But I was also like 12 when I saw that.
I would
part.
imagine 1954. It's either
pretty
going to
good
be
practical effects, yeah.
crazy, or just like, oh wow, that's a bottle going across the sea, not a submarine.
Yeah. So yes, our assignment for next week is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Thank you everyone for listening. As always, you can check out our website at www.keystonefilmreview.com. On Instagram, we're Keystone_film_review, Twitter, Keystone_film, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, Keystone Film Review, and on Letterboxd, I am Mike, KFR.
And I'm Glenn, KFR.
Oh, he fell back into the well. And that will do it until next week, when we hold our breath for 2 hours and 7 minutes, because we'll be underwater.
Yes.
Can we do it?
Hopefully.
Can we shatter Tom Cruise's world record, which was then shattered by Kate Winslet's world record of 7 minutes? Can we beat it by 2 hours? That's a real question.
I mean, come on. They're just trained Hollywood actors. No big deal.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.